Zion Williamson has been an offensive force to start the season, picking up where he left off in 2021. And he's made New Orleans really difficult to defend, so the Bucks' unique defensive scheme they used in their recent game really stood out to me and might have ramifications for how to slow down Zion ball in the playoffs. Milwaukee put Jrue Holiday on Zion to start the game. He's switched off him here, but then part two of the scheme is a big man overloading to one side of the floor to help against Zion's drives. And Lopez is so focused on Williamson here that he doesn't even really care about Jonas Valanciunas roaming in the paint because he's just fixated on Zion, and they give up a short little jumper. Holiday, of course, is an elite defender, and he can bother Williamson at the point of attack and make it trickier for him to set up his drives. And he's strong enough where he's not completely overpowered in the post, so Zion's catch here is about 15 feet away. That's far enough out for Brook Lopez to just cheat over and wait for Zion, and when he spins around Jrue, the giant 7-footer is waiting for him at the basket. Now, because the Bucks are great defensively with their twin towers, they can just put Giannis on Zion when Jrue goes to the bench, and he's able to stay with him pretty well, here moving his feet twice to kind of shut off a drive. But again, you see the other big man, Bobby Portis, sliding over to pre-rotate and show an extra body to help on these Zion drives. With Holiday back in and Lopez out, Giannis then becomes the key roaming rim protector. He leaves his mark in the corner to slide over into the driving lane, and Zion is so crafty about his moves. Holiday was taking away his stronger left hand, so Zion jab steps quickly to turn his hips and explode right, and then he's so gifted as a finisher, he can slither around Giannis at the cup. On the next possession, I'm wondering if Antetokounmpo forgot about the pre-rotation. He's sort of ball watching here, and again, Zion heads right, then spins back in the other direction, and that freakish vertical pop gets him clear of Giannis, and it's 2 more. But with Lopez back on, he floods the side with Giannis. Jrue's guarding him in the post, and what they're willing to give up to play like this is a 3 to Lopez's man, and Jonas Valanciunas was on fire to start this game. The 2 possessions before, Lopez was in his deep drop, and Valanciunas made his 6th 3 of the first half, so the Bucks just adjusted the scheme by putting Lopez on a wing who's an even weaker shooter, in this case Najee Marshall, and you see Brook is sitting at the edge of the lane waiting for a Zion drive, and Marshall's only 30% on his wide open threes in the last 3 years. So if you don't have a good shooter that can punish this, the Bucks are basically saying, we'll give up open threes to 30 or 32% shooters like Herb Jones in exchange for having Lopez shut off Zion at the rim. Here at the end of the first half, Zion ends up with Joe Ingles on him. Lopez is sagged way off of Marshall. Holiday is slid way over into his driving gap around the free throw line. And credit Zion, he wisely takes one dribble, throws an early pass, and ends up with a CJ McCollum 3. So how can New Orleans counter this and open up Zion? Well, one idea was trying to post him up against Holiday, but with Lopez basically ignoring this wing, he immediately can come over and cause problems at the rim on Zion's spin. That one is a defensive 3 seconds on Brook. So a minute later, they try to get Zion coming off a handoff around the edge of the paint, and Giannis is the first defender dropping. Brook Lopez is pulled way off the corner. He's already sitting under the basket, and that's just a wall of elite rim protection that he has to go through. Tries to squeeze a pass in, and it's a turnover. And Zion is so good as a finisher that he can occasionally squeeze one through even the very best defenders like this. But it was a heck of a lot easier for him when Lopez was off, taking away one of those massive shot blockers. And in those situations, they could bring Giannis up into the pick and roll directly, set a ball screen to try to shed Holiday, and Zion is shifty enough with the handle to lose Giannis out high, which opens up the paint for a great laydown pass. but it basically takes that level of brilliance to puncture a defense with this much length and on-ball ferocity. Here's Lopez back in. Zion tries to attack in isolation against Wesley Matthews, uses his power, and then Brook is there to really make it difficult, and you can see how frustrated he was at this point in the game. In general, I think having this much length is something that can chip into Zion's incredible efficiency around the basket. So it's important for New Orleans to have shooting on the court that can pull shot blockers out of the paint. Here they set up the cross screen to get Zion deep in the post, and Giannis is mildly preoccupied with Valanciunas because of the 6 threes he hit in the first half, so it's a much easier attack for Zion. Here's the same idea. Lopez is switched onto McCollum because of a miscommunication, so he has to stay outside because of the three-point shooting, and even pulling just one of the 2 twin towers out of the paint makes it much more realistic for Zion to finish when he gets all the way to the goal. So there are some ways New Orleans could potentially counteract this kind of defense in the playoffs, and Zion did have 7 assists in this game and make some good decisions with his early passing, but it clearly affected his own individual offense, and New Orleans didn't have a great offensive game otherwise, even with Valanciunas going 6 for 8 from downtown in that first half. Scanning the West, maybe Memphis or the Clippers or possibly even Golden State could try something like this in the postseason. And sure enough, the Grizzlies succeeded with the exact same strategy a few weeks later on New Year's Eve, using Dillon Brooks to try and pester Zion on the outside, and then throwing Jaren Jackson on a wing so he can roam off the basket from the weak side and use that length to bother Williamson around the bucket. Zion was just 6 of 16 with 9 turnovers in that game, and you can see how much harder it is for him against a wall of shot blockers who can just ignore the Pelicans' outside shooters. So I suspect teams will try something like this against New Orleans, because if you play him straight up, Zion Williamson is so good at finding creases and getting to the basket that he's going to stress your defense. So it'll be really interesting to see in April whether a Western Conference team will use one of its shot blockers and build off this strategy that Milwaukee used in its recent win down in New Orleans. There will be a full Zion video on the Pelicans offense coming out on the main Thinking Basketball YouTube channel, but this was part of our scout and a pattern we've seen developing, so we wanted to get something out about it.